Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be breaking down exactly what is going on in this week in the stock market, what happened last week, the key inflation data, and the big tech earnings. So we've got the largest IPO in history, major AI-driven earnings, and critical inflation data that could decide whether the Fed hikes or cuts rates next. Remember, this is financial advice and educational and entertainment purposes only. Please always do your research and make decisions based on personal circumstances. Investments can go down as well as up, and you may get back less than you put in. So let's get straight into it. So, market recap. So, before we look ahead, let's talk about what happened last week. Now, markets did do a little bit of sell off on a Friday as traders started pricing in the possibility of a rate hike later this year, and the numbers were a little bit rough. The S&P 500 was down 2.6% on Friday, which actually made it down 2.6% for the week. Dow was actually down 1.4% on the Friday. It's actually down 0.6% for the week. And Nasdaq was 4.2% on the Friday down, where it was actually 4.7% down for the week. Now, it's not even a small move. That's the market saying something is nervous. Something big is coming. We're not quite sure what's going to go on. And that something big is exactly what we're covering today. And that's the biggest IPO in SpaceX, the AI earnings and the data, which could move the whole market. So, what is the SpaceX IPO, which everyone is talking about? Everyone is talking about Elon Musk and SpaceX, SpaceX this, SpaceX that. Well, it's set to open trading on Friday at $135 per share. Now, that values the company at around 1.78 to 1.8 trillion dollars. Now, that makes it the largest IPO in history. Bigger than Alibaba, bigger than the Saudi Aramco. And yes, the IPO alone could make Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire. But the real story isn't valuation, it's the impact the IPO could have on the entire market. But what does SpaceX actually do? Well, SpaceX isn't just a rocket company, it's a vertically integrated space infrastructure giant. They design and manufacture reusable rockets like the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy, which have completely changed the economics of space launches. They're building Starship, which is a fully reusable system designed for Moon, Mars, and beyond. They operate Starlink, a global satellite internet network that has already got millions of users and becoming a major revenue engine. But here's the most part that people miss. SpaceX is positioning itself as a space-based AI infrastructure company. Think satellite data, global connectivity, compute in orbit. This is bigger than rockets. But how could the IPO shake this market? Well, number one, it could be liquidity drain. So 1.8 trillion IPO pulls a massive amount of capital into one stock. That means investors may sell other high growth tech names to fund their SpaceX position, which means short term pressure is very possible. Number two is sentiment boost. So a successful IPO of this size can lift risk appetite across the entire market. If SpaceX does trade well, tech could catch a bid. Number three, benchmark inclusion. So once SpaceX joins the S&P or Nasdaq, and it will, passive funds will become forced buyers, and that creates long-term demand. Now the IPO isn't just a company event, it's a market event overall. So what is going to happen to Rocket Lab? So I hold Rocket Lab, of course. Will SpaceX help or hurt it? And probably a few people will be questioning what happens to the other space stocks. Well, in the short term, Rocket Lab could see pressure because investors may rotate out of smaller space companies like Rocket Lab to buy SpaceX. In the medium term, it could go either way. So it could go up because it brings attention to the entire space sector, or it could go down because its scales makes Rocket Lab look riskier. But in the long term, SpaceX doesn't actually matter to Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab's success of stock depends on its execution, the launch, margins, and Neutron, not SpaceX itself. So if Rocket Lab delivers, long-term holders will be rewarded. But we've also haven't got just SpaceX. On Wednesday, the Oracle earnings are out. This is a major read-through for the entire AI and cloud computing trade. They got cloud revenue growth, AI infrastructure demand, competition with Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, CapEx guidance, and enterprise software demand. So if all this does well, and especially when Oracle is a major supplier of the AI compute infrastructure, it could lift stuff and stocks across AI related sectors. Enable earnings, especially on Thursday, is one of the ones that I like to look forward to. I remember when I used to use these at school and college and all that. These were big back in the day. And it's good to see if they're still growing their creative cloud, their adoption of AI, tools like Firefly, of course, margins, and the second half guidance of 2026. Now, this is a bellwether for creative software, and it's AI assisted productivity. If businesses are spending, the Adobe earnings will show it. But not just the earnings that we've got this week, we've got hot non-farm payrolls, which happened last week. So this shocked the market. And for anyone who is kind of new to this or doesn't really understand what this means, non-farm payrolls means how many jobs the US has added. Hot report equals like more jobs than expected. More jobs equals stronger economy, which is higher inflation risk. Now, of course, vice versa is a little bit different. So when inflation risks rises, the Fed may delay cuts or even raise rates. And this is why we saw the sell-off on Friday. So why is the inflation the Fed's second mandate? And why is inflation important? Well, the Fed has two goals: maximum employment, stable prices, which is inflation. Now, employment is strong, so inflation becomes the focus. Now, this Wednesday we get CPI, and this is the big one. Markets want cooling inflation, lower core CPI, signs that the shelter inflation is easing. Now, if CPI comes in hot, rate hikes fears rise, techs and growth stocks could fall, and yields may spike. Now, this is one of the most important macro data of the week. Plus, we've also got PPI and consumer sentiment or production inflation, which, if PPI raises, companies may pass those costs to consumers. Those that mean like future CPI pressure, so if it raises, CPI could be under pressure a lot. But on Friday as well, we've got the consumer sentiment. Now, the University of Michigan reading hit an all-time low of 44.8 in May. Now, economists expect 46 this week. Now, the lower it means consumers feel worse about the economy, and that can slow spending, which ironically can help cool inflation. So, this is what it means for the week for investors, especially like me, looking out to what is going to be happening. And the big one for me really is the SpaceX IPO. It's one of the biggest events this week, and it's a huge liquidity moment and a spotlight in the entire space sector. But of course, we've also got the Oracle and Adobe earnings, which will shape the news and assessment around AI and software. But we've also got the data like CPI, PPI, and assessment, which will determine whether the Fed leans toward its rate hike. So expect volatility, expect some good opportunities to buy when people are selling and being fearful. And pretty much that is it. And I hope you guys enjoy. Leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.